I'm Kristen Ande, founder and chief strategist of Ande Consulting Group. I founded my company almost 10 years ago because I love helping people not only succeed, but thrive in their careers and their lives. So many times I meet amazing people who have so much more potential than what they're utilizing. As I engage with them, there seems to be a common theme: the limits they place on themselves. Throughout this podcast series, we're going to visit some incredible people who have created more intentional lives for themselves, those who've had that no limits moment where they chose to grow and they put things in motion to help them do so. We will focus on how you can break through limits. We will equip you with strategies to help you lead a more intentional life, and we will have a lot of fun along the way. So let's dive in. And welcome to No Limits with Kristen Ande. We are here today with Ande Frazier, who is the head of vision and branding at myWorth. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. So we have known each other or of each other. I think we just actually met in person a few weeks ago for the first time after, a couple decades in the industry. Oh.
Yeah, and we've crossed paths so many times, so it's good to finally meet you.
It was great. It was great. So you've got a lot of history in the financial industry. So I want to spend some time today talking about kind of what you're seeing with finance. And the people that listen to our podcast, we've got a great group, males, females, all over the board, age-wise. But I think the work you guys are doing at myWorth is so important because it's an area that a lot of us don't really pay as much attention to as we should. So tell us a little bit about you and kind of the work you're doing now.
So my history in the industry, I've been in the business for about 25 years in the financial business, and I've worked in all different parts. I've worked with clients as an advisor. I've worked with firms in local areas. I've worked with corporate offices. I've worked managing a fintech company. And so this is a new thing for me, launching myWorth. And one of the things that we wanted to focus on is that people aren't making decisions around their money in a vacuum. They're typically making these decisions in the midst of an opportunity or a crisis or a whirlwind kind of triggering event. And when advisors approach their clients understanding that, I'm talking to you about your money, but it's also might be in the context of a divorce or a job change or a launching of a business or expecting a new child. And so there's a lot of stuff that you have to unpack around those money decisions. And I think that's really important to pay attention to.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of times when I was still in the industry and seeing clients, I always said that people made money decisions based on fear and greed, and that my role as an advisor was to help them manage their fear and greed, because they're usually factors sometimes, I think, that come into people's life that they don't make the best decisions on their own, left to their own devices. Not because they're not smart or capable, but just because other things are weighing in a little bit. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that, when you're trying to deal with a lot of stuff going on, you may not think you're making an emotional decision, but you can't sometimes see it when you're in the whirlwind of it. Right. You can't see, hey, I'm making this decision, and maybe it's not really the best thing. So there's a couple of ways that we can work with people to kind of have them step back. It's to help them recognize what are they feeling and what are they thinking and what are they doing, just getting really present to that. And then having them reflect on, okay, what was your values? What was the goals that you had? What was most important? Kind of giving them a reference point.
Yeah.
And that helps them to take that step back and say, okay, let me recalibrate, frame so that I can respond appropriately.
So what types of, what commonalities are you seeing? I'd say male and female as a whole. What behaviors are people seeing or exhibiting financially now? Is it the market's been in a little, we've had some good years. And so I feel like a lot of times people are maybe approaching things different than they used to. What's happening in the marketplace now?
Well, I think a lot of people kind of rely on the latest information that they've heard. So if a friend tells them about something or a family member, or they hear something on the radio, they kind of think that the last thing they heard may be the best thing to rely on. Yeah. And I think that can certainly influence you, but I think you have to do a little research and make some decisions that are a little bit more vetted than just going with the last piece of information you heard. And then there's a lot of confirmation bias out there. We certainly are seeing that in the political arena. Today's election day, so we're seeing that. but it also is in place in the financial arena too, where people have a belief and then they will seek out evidence to support their belief. So if they think the market is not doing well, they're going to find all the articles or online content or, to kind of reinforce that. And then they make a decision on that. And I think that there's some problems with that when you're not able to hear contradictory information, because when you're closed-minded, you may be missing some important information that can influence you.
I think you're spot on, and that it transcends finance, like you said. Finance, politics, anything. You can find information to support whatever. I mean, there is still a lot of flat Earth evidence out there at this point that I've seen. Somebody was joking about that recently, and I think you could take any argument on either side and find enough evidence to support it. But in the financial world, that can be scary. I mean, this can have pretty lasting consequences if you're not weighing both sides of the coin.
Yeah. And there's so much. I mean, I think that one of the things we find that clients are telling us, or that certainly I've done a lot of interviews with consumers lately, is they're saying, gosh, there's just a lot of information to sort through. And how do I know which piece of advice is right for me and how it fits into my overall plan? And that's one of the challenges you have when you're trying to only get advice online and do it yourself, is you're not necessarily knowing, is the advice reliable? There's a lot of financial gurus out there, people that are unlicensed, uneducated, giving advice, and they're saying, hey, listen to me, I'm unbiased. But unbiased can also mean uneducated, or there's no regulation over them. So they can give you advice, and if it doesn't go well, there's no accountability there. So you have to be real careful where you get information.
You can get information. I mean, there are a bunch of, like you said, I'll say it, fools out there giving a lot of different information, and it does get to be scary. Because I would assume you've probably heard some horror stories with clients that have come in that just have not had good experiences. I mean, what are you hearing from the public when they come to myWorth or come seeking your advice? Are they just, what's happened to them up until that point?
Well, a lot of people have told us that they have gotten involved in maybe some kind of, I wouldn't say get rich quick, or, some things that seem too good to be true. And if something's really too good to be true, chances are you need to vet it a little bit more. But I think everybody's feeling the pressure of needing more money for retirement, needing more money to live. And even though unemployment's down and the economy's doing well, people are still struggling to make ends meet. Yeah. I saw a stat this week on MSNBC that said that 39% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account. They can't even afford to pay a basic bill. So I think we've got some challenges for us. And so what happens is they're kind of looking for, how can I get some real quick results? Yeah. And that may mean taking a risk or getting involved in something that might be a little shady. And so a lot of it, people who've come to us have said, I got caught up in that at one point in time. And so there's some distrust around, who do I listen to and how do I know when there's good advice out there?
And it's true, because it gets scary. I've certainly had clients and heard of people and heard numerous stories of somebody 50, 60 years old, loses their job, wipes out their retirement. And, I've had people close to me with that happens where, you get laid off. I've a friend of mine now that lost his very high position through no fault of his, but the company made a decision to let him go. And it's tough when you're in that situation and you end up spending down some money that you've saved and put aside. That a lot of people are getting to retirement age where they're like, I'm going to have to rethink this, because retirement used to be you'd work for a company, you get your pension on your way out the door, and you vacationed a little. But nowadays I'm seeing so many people in retirement that are working and having to, not by choice, but by default, by the fact they are having to, because it just gets tough out there, I think.
Something interesting that we're seeing a lot of now is a lot of people have side gigs. Mm-hmm. They have side hustles.
The side hustles,
where they're, they have their main job, and that may be where they're getting their benefits, but they're doing other things in order to be able to make up the extra money that they need to survive. And so they may be, having a part-time business, or they may be doing something in sales, or whatever they need to do to make ends meet. And so that's becoming kind of a more popular thing that we're seeing, is many people have a couple of different things that they're doing.
And it's not as looked down upon, I don't think, because, I know a ton of people in network marketing, or that have, part-time side businesses that they run. I mean, I know some kids that have side hustles. One of my oldest is in college, and one of her friends in high school had best way I can describe it, it's a shoe business. He would resell shoes. This kid was making serious money in high school because he had that side hustle, just being proactive and trying to figure out, hey, how can I do a little bit more? Because it's, I think that the stat would you say 39% people have less than 1,000? What was the number?
Yeah. The stat was 39% could not even cover $1,000 setback. And there was another part of that stat that 21% of people have nothing saved at all. So they're living from paycheck to paycheck. And so, you look and you say, well, the economy's doing well and unemployment's down, but people are still struggling to, make ends meet, to get to a point where they can start to save. And so when somebody gets laid off, or when something happens to their automobile or their roof leaks, they have to get it replaced. You get a flat tire. I had a blowout in my car, and my tire went, just blew out in the highway. Thank goodness I wasn't injured, but I took it in, and I went to get the tire repaired, and the guy's like, you need 4 new tires. Well, that's exactly that type of thing. And fortunately, I was able to get 4 new tires, but $1,000, if you don't have money sitting aside to buy 4 new tires, what happens? You're kind of stuck. You can't drive your car. So it's a sad state that we're seeing that so much, but I think you're right. It's pretty prevalent right now. Yeah. And, I think it's also about if they can't cover those kinds of things, then they go into debt.
Sure.
And so now you've got this mounting debt. And so then you're trying to kind of save or trying to get to a point where you can dig yourself out of the hole that you're in. And so retirement gets kind of lost out there in the distance. So people are having to work into their 70s and sometimes their 80s just to, be able to kind of have money coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, I love what I do and what I have the opportunity to do. So I see myself working a long time, but I always want it to be because I want to, not because I have to. I mean, I have clients that are well in their, late 60s, and they love what they do, but financially they could retire. And that's a position we all want to be in, is be in a position where you can make choices. I kind of, the phrase I use all the time is I want to be financially in a position where I can lead, I call it a spontaneous lifestyle. So if I wanted to take a trip, or if I wanted to say, hey, this vacation came up, or, I wanted to go to Italy, or I wanted to buy this bag, or what have you, that's always an option. And that's not as quantifiable as a lot of people would see it. But for me, that makes sense. That's kind of where I like things financially. But I don't know that behaviors, I don't know if our behaviors have gotten us into this point, or the economy. Part of me thinks it's just more people and our behaviors. I mean, have we dug ourselves into this hole?
I think that there is a little bit of, I don't want to say that everybody has a lack of personal responsibility, but I do think that people are kind of living in the moment. Yeah. And so they're not thinking about how to get ahead. It doesn't, if you start early enough, especially, then you can save a little bit, and then, you'll have more later on. And I tell people, hey, if you get in a habit of saving, 10, 15, 20% would be ideal. To start saving early, then it becomes a habit, so that as you earn more money and as you do well later on in life, you've developed that habit. I've been teaching that to my kids. Anytime they get a gift of money or cash, or earn it from a side job, I tell them put 20% away. I want to develop that habit as early as possible, and then learn to live on what's left. A lot of people will pay their bills or spend money, and then if there's anything left, they'll save. But that's really the opposite of what they should do. They should set aside money,
pay yourself
for
first.
Their future, for their and then learn to live on what's left. And so I think there's kind of, we used to say keeping up with the Joes. I say it's like keeping up with the Kardashians. Everybody is trying to kind of live in this glamorous lifestyle, and yet 39% can't cover $1,000 setback. So something's going on that we have to take a look at, and we have to be okay with not having it all. And I think social media has helped to perpetuate that kind of, you see everybody and they're living these great lifestyles, and and they're doing all these fun things, and you think you have to keep up with that. And sometimes that means you're going into debt, you're not saving, and you're not doing some of the things you need to do.
I agree completely. Yeah, I agree completely. We've kind of got this false sense of what is really going on. We're not really taking a look at ourselves as much as we should. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dive a little bit into kind of what this means for us all, and what the future of finance is looking like, and what we can all do. So we'll be back in just a few. everyone. Check out my podcast, No Limits with Kristen Andre, on Tuesday nights at 7:30. We will tackle the things holding you back and the limits you set on yourself and equip you with some strategies to lead more intentional lives. Podcast launches every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on facebook.com/Andre Group. That's facebook.com/ANDREE Group. We'll see you there. Welcome back, everyone, to No Limits with Kristen Andre. We are here with Ande Frazier of myWorth. And before the break, we were talking about kind of the state of everything and how financially we're in this keeping up with the Kardashian stage. I mean, maybe not to that extent, because I don't know if any of us can keep up with that level of spending. Sure. But, yeah, I mean, did we dig ourselves into this hole? I mean, is it because we've been trying to rely too much on what we're Googling on the internet or what we're finding out? I mean, how do we get here, for one, and then how do we get out?
You know, I think it's interesting. I've been finding a lot of people think I don't make enough money to need to talk to somebody. You know, I'm not in that ultra wealthy. I guess they have
hear that a lot.
Yeah, only want to work with people that are ultra wealthy. And yet I think it is that they enjoy talking to somebody. And so a lot of people are doing some stuff maybe through their job, or maybe they're throwing some money aside for a rainy day, but they're not really diving into how they can make the most of it until something happens, until a crisis occurs. Yep. And now they're in the middle of a crisis trying to figure out what's going on. And sometimes it's too late, you know, especially if you think about all of the storms we've been having with people that are like, oh gosh, I wish I would have had flood insurance.
Right.
You know, now I can't cover that. And so I think that sometimes we wait until an event happens to kind of awaken us to what we need to do. And so what I find is when people try to do it themselves, that they sometimes miss things that are important, especially when it comes to dealing with, money. So many people are focused on saving and putting money away for retirement that they might forget about the protection area that's really important for their lives. You know, what happens if they can't work anymore? Do they have disability insurance? If something were to happen to them or their spouse, do they have life insurance? Are they properly protected for liability? And so those things are kind of somewhat often overlooked when people try to do it themselves.
You know, I find that a lot, and obviously being in the financial world and with an insurance company for a number of years, I'm a big insurance fan. I think but you're right. It is a non-demand product. It is not something that we're going, I think I'm going to go out and buy disability insurance today. But when you look at financial catastrophes, really, it's because people weren't protected. I think the protection piece is a huge component. That I agree with you. I see that part missing, the protection piece missing with the do-it-yourselfers. So I think that's
saving some money. And Kristen, I think that it's interesting. People are shoving money away that are saving for the future.
Right.
But then when they need money now,
their emergency
like when they need money for an emergency or college or an opportunity that might come about, it's all tied up in qualified money so that there's a tax consequence to getting access to that. So there's a lot of life that we have to live between now and retirement. So you have to be able to plan long-term, mid-term, and short-term.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I call it the emergency fund. I mean, I know you know that term, but you need to have that money set aside in cash that you can get to if something happens. And you mentioned the storms, and you know, I had some people I know in Florida that was part of Hurricane Michael, and their home was not destroyed, but they were not able to get back to it for a while. Their business was completely destroyed. Right. The husband and wife both work in the business, so 100% of their revenue and their income for their family was gone in one storm. I mean, so it was, and there were a lot of people that reached out and were very generous and donated money and everything like that. But it's those type of events that you're like, man, I mean, you're exactly right. It's after the fact we go, oh, I should have done this. You know, I don't know what they had set up from an insurance standpoint, but it's looking at these things before they happen. I think it's a big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then they're faced with now, you know, trying to rebuild their lives and trying to get back to it. And there's an emotional toll to that. Like there's something to process about losing your business. And so now you're trying to kind of figure out a way to generate income so that you can go forward in your life and repair your home or your business to get started. But there is a toll that it takes on you, you know, and how you feel about the situation. And that can be getting people down. And it's hard. So if you've taken the time to do some of that pre-planning, at least in a crisis, okay, I'm going to be okay. I can get through this. And then you can work on the healing
so financially
part.
you can get through. Yeah, as long as you know you're okay financially, it gives you more leeway and flexibility on the other piece. Now, one thing I'm curious, and I'd love your take on is I'm seeing all over the board the robo-advisors and the online platforms. And I mean, where do you see that going? Because right now you can go online, throw some money in an account, and the robos do the work for you. So how is that? Where do you see that going in the industry? How's that going to affect the work?
So for the past, I guess, since 2014, I've been running a fintech company. And even myWorth, I think, is considered to be somewhat of a fintech company. That's financial technology. And what we're seeing when all the research comes in is that the robo platforms are not doing as well as people thought they did. And I think that what happens there is that people can choose an algorithm or choose kind of a path. I want to retire at this age, so this is kind of what I need to do. And it's diversified for you. But there's something about like, well, am I sure? Like, am I sure this is the right thing? And how does this impact? And what are the rules? And so it's like me going on to WebMD. I can probably diagnose myself and figure out what drugs I need to take. But at the end of the day, I'm going to call my doctor. And so we see a lot of people saying they like the idea of what a robo would provide them. They like the online access, the 24/7, feasibility of doing that. But they still miss an opportunity to connect with a human being that can ask them about what's important to you. What are your goals and your values? What are your beliefs about money? And what are your dreams? And how do you want to accomplish that? And that part of it is something that the robo platforms really can't provide in the same way that a coach or a human being or an advisor could provide.
Well, I think there's an emotional, there is an emotional element to finance. If your robo platform helps you save for retirement, you get to retirement and you start taking money out. With an advisor, I have an advisor client of mine that I work with that just had a big retirement party for all of his clients that happened to be retiring this year. And it was fantastic. They loved it. They brought their families together and they got to celebrate the work the clients had done and the work the advisor had helped them do. And it was cool. Like it made it a goal. It wasn't just a number. So to me, finance has always been about the goal behind it and the story behind it and the person, not just what the account balance is.
At myWorth, one of the things that we've been doing is reaching out to, women and asking them, tell us about what you need as far as guidance and advice and knowledge around money, because we know that the financial industry has a lot of solutions, but we want to know what does the everyday woman need or man need in terms of what are you looking for from the financial industry. And one of the things that I heard that was very interesting is one woman said, me and my girlfriend worked with the same advisor, and he did a plan based on our age and our, rate of return and all the, the time that we needed to save for retirement. And we both have about the same amount of money saved for retirement, and we're about the same age. But she's going through her money faster than I am. And she said one thing that kind of occurred is he never talked with us about how we spend. So she spends differently than I do. So even though algorithmically they kind of, guesstimated how much they would need to have in retirement and they saved for that and they have it, they're both retired. One of them is going through the money at a much faster rate than the other one. And so that's an advantage of working with, and you would hope that the advisors would be asking those kind of questions, like, tell me about your spending and how are you, and looking at those patterns of behavior so that you can see things so that you can best guide around that.
So what I'm hearing is, I love all online stuff, and I agree. Having access to your accounts and getting to see everything and look at it is good. But I know you guys offer that and be able to access and look at stuff online, but and a lot of companies do, but it's the behavioral finance component that I feel like is missing. And honestly, it's missing with a lot of advisors. There are certainly advisors I've come across over the years that it's all about rate of return. And when I have girlfriends or, guy friends coming to me and saying, which advisor should I use? I'm not picking the one that's got the rate of return. I'm picking the one that has a great rate of return, but is also asking questions and trying to get to know the person and understand their situation. And like you mentioned, their spending habits, because that varies. That varies greatly from person to person.
I think the advisors also will kind of start to evolve their role from not just giving the guidance and the planning advice, but also in managing some of that behavior, because when you're nervous about the market, that's when you tend to say, I'm just going to get out of it. And that may be the worst time to get out of the market. And so, and a good advisor will help to kind of guide that client through that process so that they can manage those anxious feelings or those excited feelings. It can go both ways. And so we're seeing a lot of advisors starting to get designations, like the designation that I have, the behavioral financial advisor, where there's a conversation around the behavior around money so that we can best give clients that kind of advice and guidance.
And I think until we understand the behaviors around it, it's going to be really hard to have good outcomes with it. That's the part I feel like you can't manage. It's just like you mentioned WebMD. You're going to the doctor. You may research the heck out of it before you go to the doctor and say, here's what I think I have, but you still need him to say, yep, you're right. Or, you know what, that's not what it is. Based on your set of facts, here's what I'm seeing, and it's a little bit different.
Exactly.
And the same thing in finance.
Exactly.
So what differences are you seeing between men and women? How they behave financially?
So men I have to say, I give men a lot of props because they have, maybe it's because of the way we've all been kind of raised, where they are thinking ahead a little bit more. Not that women aren't, but I think that sometimes women have chosen to either delegate, defer, or deny that they need to do something. And now what we're seeing is that women are controlling more and more wealth. They're having bigger and more prestigious jobs. They're getting more educated. 51% of the wealth is controlled by women. Yeah. And so as women are kind of coming up and grow and, kind of gaining more power and authority and financial acumen, what we're starting to see is that women are paying attention to their money a little bit more. Having said that, you and I are both women. We're busy with our lives. And so sometimes we think, okay, I'll get to that. And we don't, it may not be something we get to right away until a crisis occurs, until there's a triggering event. And at myWorth, we call these money moments, where there might be a planned money moment, like you might be planning to launch a new business or planning to leave your job. There's also the unexpected, oh my goodness, I just lost my spouse, or I just, my husband just told me he wanted a divorce, or whatever that might be. It's an unexpected, shocking event.
Right.
And then there is the light bulb moments where you might see a friend go through something and think, gosh, I need to be doing something to prepare for that. And so those aha or light bulb moments. And we really talk about the importance of what those moments represent and how you can approach taking action, whether you're at a planned, unexpected or light bulb moment. So that's something we really focus on at myWorth.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, I like the idea of the money moment. So we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, let's think about some things that we can do to kind of all get ourselves in line and make sure that we're paying attention to those money moments in our lives. We'll be back in just a second. Hey everyone, it's Kristen. Be sure and visit my website at www.andregroup.com. That's www.andreegroup.com. And while you're there, be sure to download my white paper, Top 10 Reasons Your Business Isn't Growing Fast Enough. Now get out there and create your no limits moment. Welcome back, everyone, to No Limits with Kristen Andre. We are wrapping up our time with Ande Frazier from myWorth. And prior to the break, you kind of threw out the term money moments, which I like that. So those moments in our life that made us either wake up, pay attention, something. So, how do people aren't talking about these. I mean, but they're shaping how we think about and view money.
Absolutely. Money's always kind of been this taboo conversation that nobody really wants to talk about it. I remember I grew up in the South, and you didn't ask people how much money they made, or you just did. That was just a no, a question you just didn't ask. And so I think, unfortunately, because people don't talk about money, that when they need help or when they have questions, they don't want to let people know, hey, they don't want to be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm struggling in this area, or I need some help, or who should I talk to? And so kind of in this taboo subject, is that's something we want at myWorth to kind of start having people is break it apart and start talking about it, not sharing, how much money you have in your bank account, but just talking about your beliefs about money. And so one of the things I have people do at on our Facebook page, it's myworthfinance.com is our website, but our Facebook page, if you search myWorth Finance, you can find it, is to share your money moments. What was the first money moment that you had? Was it the lemonade stand? Was it selling Girl Scout cookies? The first time that you recognized that like money means something, so it's always a good exercise to have people start with that and kind of explore that for themselves.
Yeah, because I mean, thinking back, it is going to shape some really early beliefs. And then, you mentioned earlier kind of the Kardashians and the social media piece. I think as we get older, we kind of start to reshape what money means. And interestingly enough, what I've found in recent years is it's less about the number. For me, at least. It's not, we all have a number we need to save, a number we need to get to for retirement and those pieces, but it's really about what that number provides. So for me, financially for me, success financially is not having to ask permission financially. Meaning like I told somebody once, I don't want to have to check my bank account to say yes to a good opportunity. That's financial security to me. But I think it's different for everybody. So how do you guys measure success financially?
Well, we asked this question of all the different, we've done probably hundreds of consumer interviews at this point with myWorth. And we asked that question, what does financial success mean to you? It's a great question to ask. Yeah. And what we heard a lot of is the same kind of thing that you said, Kristen, is that most people, it's not about the number.
Yep.
It's about how does it make you feel? And a lot of the women said, hey, I just want to be able to know that I'm going to be okay, that I can take care of myself. I'm not going to be a burden to my family or friends, and that I'm going to be okay. And if I have a little extra, do some extra things, that's terrific. It wasn't about stuff or collecting stuff or having a lot of money. It was the feeling of safety and security that was really important for a lot of people.
Do you see that different? I know you guys focus mostly with female consumers. Do you see that or hear different responses from the men? So the guys listening, is it security as important to them, or is it something different?
It's not as important to them, at least in their responses. So almost unanimously, we heard security and safety was important for women. For men, a lot of them wanted to have a little bit more. There was a striving towards acquiring more money or to be able to have more and, kind of reach for that next level. And so that was something interesting. But you know what? It was really split with men. Some men want to have more, and some men say, I want to have more time. And what money can generally do for me is it can give me time. The more money I have, the less I have to work, and the more time I can spend with my family. So in some cases, it was kind of split for men.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it follows into the behavior. And that's where I feel like, the work you do and at myWorth and a lot of advisors, that's the piece that we are missing. It's that behavioral, it's the feeling behind it. Because money creates opportunities and it creates security, like you said, but it's not all about the numbers. It's really about what that looks like uniquely for us. So, so we, the whole goal with this podcast and with No Limits is trying to get people to push through limits. And I think financially, that's a limit for a lot of people. So at the end of every episode, we like to issue a challenge to our listeners. And we've got a Facebook page as well, #NoLimitsMoment. So every episode, we share kind of what the challenge is and let our audience participate. So financially, and based on what we're talking about today, what do we want to challenge our audience to do, Ande?
Well, I think there's really two parts. The first is I'd love to hear what some of their first money moments are, because those do tend to influence how we think about money. So if you want to share what your money moments are, you could do #myWorthFinance, #money moments, and share those with them, because we'd love to hear, kind of that. And the second thing is to ask 5 people. This gets you kind of out of your shell, starting to break down those taboo conversation here. Ask 5 people, what does financial success mean to them? And just listen to responses. And this way you start talking about money, but not in a way that makes people feel on guard, just in a way that kind of breaches and opens up the conversation around money. What does financial success mean to you? And listen to the responses. And we'd love to hear what you're hearing out there too. If you want to share those with us, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. So definitely share on our page and on the myWorth page. I think that's a good conversation, because it is a taboo subject, and it shouldn't be. Like you said, you don't need to go around saying, here's how much my salary is to your coworker, but to be able to talk about what success means for you financially, because then you've got more people in the stands cheering you on and able to help you get there, and hold you accountable to getting there, but also to celebrate your wins when you make it. So.
For sure.
All right. So myWorth, you said your website is what? So we can make sure everybody can check you out.
It's myworthfinance.com. And you can follow us on Facebook. If you look up myWorth Finance, we're also on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and Instagram is another great place that we're at. And we have so much great inspirational stuff that we're sharing on Instagram. So follow us everywhere. Make sure you subscribe to our website. And we want to hear from you. We really are wanting to make sure that we're listening to what people say they need so that we can really provide those resources and that knowledge.
And in a really crowded financial space, I love that and respect that so much, because I feel like so many times advisors and advisory firms are looking to say, here's a solution, here's a solution, here's a solution. But you guys are really taking a step back to let's figure out what the challenge is, what the problem is, and what people really need. So I think that's awesome. So thank you guys at myWorth for doing that. Perfect. Well, Ande, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate your insight and your knowledge. And you guys heard the challenge. So visit us on Facebook at #NoLimitsMoment and share with us your first money moment, as well as those 5 people you're going to have a conversation to find out what financial success means to them. So until next week, keep pushing past those limits, and we will see you soon.